welcome to Running with Rainbows, a featured artist of the month of May, Marisol Escobar. So for today's class, our inspiration comes from her fabulous assemblage art or sculptures that she created during the 1950s and 60s at the heyday of her popularity. So ours won't be made in quite the same way. Marisol's were life-size sculptures. They were made of thick blocks of wood. She created all of it from hand. She had giant saws in her studio. During the 1950s and 60s, she was much admired by Andy Warhol and has created a bust of him. Here on the screen is one of my favorite pieces by Marisol, The Party. And I wish someday that I could go and wander among them in person. I'm not even sure if you can, but I just am so fascinated by them. In the body of the post, I included an image relief of an ancient picture of a goddess named Hecate. So I'm reminded of Hecate when I think of Marisol's work because there is dimension to these wooden sculptures. And during the 1950s and 60s, women's rights and women's movement was a major theme, and she's well known for how she is portraying women from the inside out in the sculptures that she has put on display. So to do the class for this month, I thought instead of doing a painting that we would do some sculptural assemblage art, of which we have a few classes here at Running with Rainbows. So for this class, I suggest watching the entirety of the video first and then going back into your studio or going on a shopping trip for yourself and picking up the following items, because it could be a bit of a challenge to achieve the things that I have. So the big stash of tissue paper I got at Value Village, which is a second-hand store here in Manitoba, Canada, for $3. It was like a huge find. I was so excited. For the faces of our dolls, if you're a Sculpey person or an air dry clay person, you can definitely sculpt one out of that. I will show you some. However, if that is not something you can access, I have the class I'm showing you here is the Sonia Delaunay class from, I believe it was September last year. So if you click back to that, you can of course screenshot and print out the Vogue vintage patterns that I included for the faces of that particular art class and use that on top of your styrofoam balls, of which you may need. I love to try them out, so I bought a bag and there was large ones, medium, small, so all sizes. We're looking for whimsy here. We're looking for not realistic, not necessarily elegance. There is definitely poise in Marisol's assemblage art and her sculptures, but that I don't think is artificial, contrived. I think that was just a part of her artistic output. So definitely make this your own, friends. So here I am showing you the wooden dowels that I used to skewer through the styrofoam balls. They went in fairly easy. You're going to need some tissue paper. I covered this large styrofoam ball in matte medium and strips of tissue paper and some random feathers that I had. So collage medium will be a helpful tool to have. Acrylic paint, wooden bamboo dowels for putting your sculpture on like a totem pole. That particular styrofoam ball was wrapped in tissue paper and then painted in acrylic paint, whereas the blue styrofoam ball was just painted straight paint. So if you want an opaque coverage, you're going to need to do more than one layer. If you're just want to try one out to see how you feel and get the flow of it, then don't worry about getting absolute coverage. Just try it for the fun of it. So more is better. Get a bunch of stuff. I painted some coffee filters in black with the idea of maybe doing like polka dots so it would look like stars. I have my hot glue gun on hand. I have some paper plates covered in paint that I used as palettes in art projects for wings should I want them. This particular one that I did as our trial piece has 3 styrofoam balls. One is covered in tissue paper, then was painted. A coffee filter shawl, so to speak, paper plate wings, and doilies. Kind of reminded me of Judy Jetson, which was an old show in the 1980s. So in any case, yours may look very different, and that is fine. And her face was the Sculpey clay, and I opted out of including that because that would take us way over half an hour for the class for me to kind of go into that. But air dry clay works. If you have another means, if you work with paper towel to create face shapes, you can definitely do that and then cut it out and glue it on, or just print out a copy or draw a face shape on a piece of paper and collage it on. Use a permanent marker so it doesn't smear. Alright, so for right now I'm going to show you quickly how to go about putting tissue paper onto your styrofoam ball. It's really not all that complicated. I suggest you be liberal with your matte medium and that you do not have a high expectation of a smooth surface. Adding the tissue paper is 100% going to create ripples and pills. go with your flow, friends. If you want a smooth surface, I highly recommend doing a layer or two of acrylic paint, and that will help to give you more of a smooth surface to play with. Because if you wanted to go over top of your dried ball assemblage pieces with a Posca pen to make marks, to do stripes, polka dots, stars, some kind of repeating graphic pattern, you absolutely can. You might find it easier to go on top of straight acrylic paint on a styrofoam ball rather than on top of the tissue paper. But I encourage you to be creative and to enjoy making the mistakes that will inevitably occur when we set out on an art project we haven't tried before, so that you can see what happens when you're trying something new. That's always something to learn. So here I'm liberally coating my ball around. I've got a little margarine container underneath that actually has the matte medium in it. And then I'm just going to use that with a dowel so that I can spin gently the styrofoam ball as I smooth the glue on. Regarding tissue paper, not all tissue paper is created equal. That is most certainly true. So this metallic tissue paper is quite thick in the sense that it didn't shred at all while I applied the matte medium. So it was quite nice to try. I didn't know that beforehand, so I was experimenting. However, with the big pink tissue ball piece here on the left, the tissue paper is much of the finer quality one that you see in a gift shop, so it shredded quite quickly. That was fine. I went with it and just kept applying more and more layers and let it dry overnight, and I kind of like the translucent sort of Cinderella vibe that I get from it, so definitely enjoyed that. So back to Marisol Escobar for a couple of seconds. She was born in 1930 in May, and as it turned out, today's April 30th. I'm a little behind getting this video going because I was busy with the mandalas that we're doing this week as well, but I thought it was kind of wild that this is also the day of her passing. So love and blessings to Miss Marisol, and thank her for being a part of our class today. So she was born in Paris, and her family ended up moving to America and living. They were a Venezuelan family that lived in Paris and moved back to America. And she ended up using just her first name, Marisol, as she became the queen of the pop art movement in the 60s. And what I found when I was researching a lot of the articles about her, and which I, of course, definitely always recommend you do, because I am not a writer, I'm not a researcher, I'm just an artist and a lover of art, and I'm also not that sort of fine artist type of mindset. So please do some extra research. These artists are amazing, and they have absolutely more than I can get on there. So also, side note, here I have cut out and put the patterned face from the Sonia Delani class on the black pre-painted styrofoam ball. It's going to dry overnight and form the face of one of our doll pieces. So Marisol, just looking here at my notes. So she was famous in a way that was unique for women in the 1950s and 60s. For 10 years, I mean, I think it's like Jennifer Lawrence level fame. You heard of nothing else but her. And then she just poof, disappeared from the scene. So I find that the idea of celebrity, especially because it's 2025 and we have a different view of celebrity than they did in the 1960s, has become so all-consuming for that particular artist. If you look at Chapel Rowan and some of the stuff she's endured on the red carpet from paparazzi and her response to that, and whether or not you feel comfortable with how she responded, that is something that I don't think Marisol had the opportunity to protect herself and to respond. So a lot of the authors of the articles that I read sort of insinuated that her silence, as mysterious as it was, as it led to this wonderful aspect of her persona, was probably also there to avoid having people reduce their opinion of her artwork. Sometimes when you allow another person's imagination and allow, say, somebody who's an intellectual in an art world or a critic to sort of rescue you with an opinion about your work, you might as well let them do the work and elevate you rather than try to insinuate that their opinion doesn't quite capture what you've made and have them reduce you to a silly female in an article. So especially with Marisol, she started out her career shooting paint in balloons on canvas, and I think, like I mentioned last May, that looked very sexy to men in the 1960s, so she got that attention, and then she was really famous. So what she did with that fame was a large series of assemblage sculptures. She even did one at the Last Supper, but that was in 1984, and that's very hard to find a large-scale image of. A lot of them are very small on the internet and won't let you zoom in, so I'm horribly curious about all of the detail work on that. But with those pieces, she worked in plywood, charcoal, paint, parts. She did plaster casts of her own body parts to include in it. The party is, I just love that one. There's so many different features for the statues that are included. It was a lot of fun today to sort of go with the circle shape instead of the square, as Marisol so enjoyed, and try that out and enjoy the idea of being a feminine beauty, not having to look necessarily for the male gaze, but for the feminine gaze, which is largely becoming more accepted in the mainstream view, which I'm grateful for. I find there is definitely a distinct difference, and I'm all here for it. So in this one, was the abstract one. So this wasn't the one I wanted us to focus on for the class, because largely she had Sculpey and faces, and I couldn't encourage you to go out and buy all that stuff in good conscience. So I didn't want you to feel like you had to. So I'm just showing you all of the different ways that you could play, and to not limit yourself to just what I'm showing you in the class. So I loved using the black coffee filter, or the coffee filter that I painted black, and I went in with a silver paint pen to sort of add the dots and create kind of a moony star vibe shawl coming across from her upper area down. And sort of, I love the split face. I'm a feminist, so I feel it's a bit of a commentary on the, you know, women in the world today and what we're experiencing at large. So this is a lot of fun, and you'll find you have to fuss. It's not a one and done, a pin here, click there, look, it's beautiful, because we each see it differently. And sculpture is meant to be seen from all sides. So one of the things I had to keep in mind for myself was not to go glue gun crazy, because I didn't want big globs and spider webs of glue gun lingering on her shape if somebody happened to spin it and want to see the backside. So if that's important to you, great. If it's not, then that's okay too. You could also create these assemblage pieces on half-size shapes and just mount them in a canvas, so they would still pop out, but they'd only be, say, half a sphere, half of a cube, so that way you wouldn't have it pop off quite so much from the canvas frame. So here I'm putting on the used paper plate wings. So I just eyeballed and cut them out in sort of the shape of a fairy wing, and then I created some stripes using that silver sparkly paint pen. I liked adding that little ruff on the bottom, and finding things to put these in should be interesting. A simple one, if you don't have any ideas already, could be a potted plant pot with some soil or even just rocks in it, and then you could just insert it into the rocks and it would stay stable and standing. You could use old wine bottles to mount your own statue, little, you know, on the bamboo skewers. They could be along your coffee table or front entrance, or if you're making these with a children's theme in mind, you can definitely have a lot of fun with the princess vibe, or the whimsical Joker kind of vibe, or clown feel. Definitely, I could feel this being good for sort of that circusy feel. And then, like I said, if you've got a punch out or a die cut kit, you could definitely create shapes from old art, or as I did here, from reused palette plates that I used for painting, and use my own hand mold paint on, so that's a nice custom feature to it as well. And just slowly add your details and build sort of that energy into it. And you could always finish today and then come back to your piece, because in a few weeks you suddenly have, ooh, this feather you found, or a nifty piece of yarn, or something that just suddenly seems like it's the right thing to do. Because I definitely did struggle with how to finish this top piece, because there was no defined round shape of a head or square shape of a head to mount sort of a hat or hair or anything to. So what I did end up doing was tearing an uneven strip of tissue paper in the pink that I used for the large ball, and creating kind of an offset bow, which I will hot glue gun to the top. And I kind of feel it's sort of that Sia Singer vibe, where she wears the big bows on the top of her head. So I had a lot of fun keeping that feminine element to it, and not necessarily a rebellious note, but like it's feminine, and it's proud to be its own glorious muchness. It's not reserved, but at the same time, I don't feel the energy from the dolls is in your face. So I'm glad that I was able to keep that sort of whimsical vibe, and if you love it, you love it, and if you don't, leave it, you know, sort of feeling to it. So here I'm just sort of tightening up with the hot glue on the back. You can see I managed to maintain some simplicity in the back and didn't literally cover the entire blue ball with hot glue gun and strips. So I definitely will display this in the house and enjoy it. Here is the Sculpey faces that I am talking about. So these ones are dry. You could do them in air dry clay and just using a bamboo skewer gently suggest eyes and a nose and mouth and just let it dry. This is our dried piece of collage with the face on it. Our tissue paper dried up beautifully. Like I said, it was going to ripple and have those bumps, and I am totally fine for that. It makes it much more fabric-like. I ended up rooting around in my space downstairs and found some plaid tissue paper, which I thought was super fun and exciting to bring to this. So it adds a bit of rustic and against that gold tissue paper where it adds a bit of fashion. I briefly considered gluing that on because I really like those Sculpey faces, but because I am promising to use things that are a little bit more simple to achieve and have on hand. Like I said, you could even just draw a face on copy paper and collage it on. I recommend you use something with permanent marker though, so it doesn't smear. Here are some other options for me. I might use that paper plate again. I don't think I'm going to end up using this particular purple ball for what I thought it was. It's actually going to be the head of another face, so we're going to end up making two. And I liked how the red painted tissue paper one turned out. I really like that feel. So you could explore a lot of different options even off that round shape. You can use brass fasteners, and you could have attached more of a skirt shape underneath. You could use a paper towel roll that you drew a pair of jeans on. Like, there's a lot of different ways to play, and maybe I'll post some more this month as we go through, just to give some folks inspiration if they're feeling that the pop art statuette assembly is just a little daunting, because I love doing it. I have no problem exploring and trying, but I know that at some points in my own artistic voyage, there have been times where I've been hesitant to try something because I didn't want to make something that wasn't pretty. But I encourage you to make the ugly, to make the thing you don't think is going to look good, because a lot of art that I did not enjoy ended up being somebody else's absolute favorite. So I no longer judge it in that fashion as best I can. So I really loved how this plaid skirt could flip up in the back. Now I'm going to faff about trying to figure out how to finish these. So I'm going to hot glue the burlap piece to her top piece here. Now the burlap has a brass fastener on it, so that's what's going to hold the glue against that wooden piece there, and I'm just going to end up sort of working it down into the styrofoam and then kind of placing and trimming the bow. I really like that kind of masculine feminine vibe, having that plaid in there. And using black and red are very strong dominant colors, as well as the gold. And as I'm looking at it, the gold is kind of regal and looks like an orb, like you might hold, you know, this orb and the scepter kind of thing. And you're going to have to play, you're going to have to try things. I love using coffee filters. You could paint them in a rainbow array of colors and play mix and match. It's almost like playing dolls, which is kind of, I think, at heart why I was so drawn to Marisol Escobar's The Party, The Last Supper, Baby Doll, all of her works that feature that element of whimsy and fun and play, right? So here I cut the coffee filter in half, and I'm just sort of exploring a way to cover up the distance between the bottom of her neck and the gold ball that wasn't too, I didn't want her to get too persnickety. I still wanted that kind of, not rustic, but like non-pulsed vibe. Like, yes, I'm just this gorgeous. I don't need the finer fabrics because this fold is just so right. So it was a lot of fun just to see and play. So I hope you will have fun seeing and playing as well, and not try necessarily to get something from A to B to C, but to just start and play and see what comes when you start having fun with different things. Make a bunch of faces, make a bunch of bodies, make a bunch of dress ideas, and then sit down for about half hour, set a timer, and just go with it. Because if you spend too much time, you might end up stalling as well. You have to be a little bit of fleet of foot friends when you're making your pieces. So here I'm just gonna go off camera because it's hard to wrap. So Marisol herself used a lot of found objects in her art, which I feel is in keeping with the spirit of the class today, to just not get too worked up about having all the things to create. Creating from your own things, you could definitely raid your fabric stash for personal mementos and create fun sculptures of your family using pieces of t-shirts or different mementos that would have, you know, created that energy of them for sure. I think also when it comes to Marisol, sorry if I'm jumping around a bit, I'm trying not to dive too far into her personal history when she was younger. If you want to visit that, I did write about it last May. I feel it's a bit heavy, and I'm trying to keep my theme light this year because there's just so much heaviness that's happening in the world. So with Marisol, I feel like her distance from her insane popularity for those 10 years was probably because she just wanted to be an artist. The more I look into the lives and early years of women artists, especially through the lens of a maiden mom and now crone, it's heavy. Like, it's pretty crazy that the same pattern of being ignored or being projected upon or having to not sell out, because I don't feel that's the right way to present this either, but just shift your personal art journey to the side so that you can get somewhere, right? So I'm grateful that nowadays in 2025, with more women artists having been emerging in the last, say, 20 or 30 years, that we have access to different beginnings, and you know, tragedy and sorrow are not the source of every origin story, almost, so to speak, right? I mean, I love that art has helped lift women out of despair and despondency, because it certainly does for me. That's, you know, chiefly why I do it. But I suppose I just feel like art has had a rough start or go of it. It has definitely been tasked with having this horrible suffering attached to, you know, an emergence of an artist rather than beauty, right? So I feel like it's just been a bit eye-opening, because I didn't take fine arts in university or anything, so I wasn't sort of pre-sensitized or to the fact that women in art history are, you know, tragically underrepresented. So I really enjoyed this second one. I wasn't sure I was going to do the two because of the sculpey face, but once I got the hat on, I was rolling. So rolling up that paper coffee filter into that sort of crown shape and the button, and then using the embroidery across the purple styrofoam ball just to sort of blend out where the mask of the face joins to the back. Just really something magical occurred. So there you go, friends. I mean, I had some ideas and stuff and plans, and you still have to be able to kind of go with it and then sort of sit back. I love sitting back and being excited about something I didn't plan. I have lots of ideas, and I love it when, despite my best efforts, things go better than imagined without any of my ideas. So here I just thought that the coffee filter, if I put them flat against each other, would sort of get disappeared. So I stuck a styrofoam ball in between the first and the second to just kind of create a bit of distance and layered effect in the skirt of this particular one. So yeah, I hope if you do the class that you share it with me here on Substack at Running with Rainbows. You're welcome to share it in the private users chat thread for paying members, or if you want to just DM it to me, I would love to see it. You don't have to make them using all the stuff I made here, but I definitely recommend you give Marisol Escobar a quick Google or revisit the article of her last year. I'll try to remember to include it in the body of the podcast episode for you to click on and visit so you can learn a bit more about her history. And yeah, she is just a fascinating artist, so she's a lot to offer, and she's very inspiring. So if you get any niggles to try from looking at her amazing work, I definitely hope you will follow through, because that is the joy of being a female artist in today's world. We don't have to wait for permission. We're not looking for somebody to validate our start. If you need somebody to, you're always welcome to give me a DM. I will happily get you going. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun creating these for the class this month. I hope if you're joining me for the mandala classes this week with Running with Rainbows that you're having fun with those as well. Please feel free to screenshot and print any of the black and white ones I've created. You're welcome to trace, color them, paint them, use them in collage, anything to get your creativity going. So here is a couple of the finished pop art inspired dolls. I'm going to find some unique vessels. I think I even have some old style Coke bottles, so I'll share those pictures with them if I get them set up. Right now they're just sitting in a little cool paintbrush rack a friend gave me. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, friends. I hope you have a great May. I'm looking forward to sharing a class with you on June 1st, and we'll see you then. Thanks, friends.